Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:06 on this Friday morning in your nation's capital. It's O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 6:35, Will Scharf will join us, former federal prosecutor. He'll break down the arraignment yesterday. And as he puts it, 6 ways Jack Smith's indictment is flawed. 7:35, Andy McCarthy will give us his analysis as well. 8:05, we'll check in with Virginia Congressman Ben Cline. And at 8:35, Ian Pryor will join us, latest out of Loudoun County. I'm Larry O'Connor, alongside Patrice Onwuka, looking lovely and very, you're very alert and on fire today.
I don't know what it is.
You've been doing even when you're not here. I've seen you be doing Fox and Friends first in the morning. I did that
a couple days ago.
You are working the morning shift right
for
now.
Sure,
That's a good thing. All right, well, there's more in presidential politics news. As you know, Biden is on another vacation because, God bless him, he needed a break. It's been really
He works so hard.
He really does. The Washington Post is reporting that a couple of weeks ago, President Biden sat down for a private lunch with Barack Obama earlier this summer. Now, let me pause for a moment here. Joe Biden is the most watched man in the universe. And amongst the top 10 most watched men in the universe would be former President Barack Obama.
Sure.
How did this lunch happen without anybody noticing?
The same way that cocaine ended up in the White House without anybody noticing.
Are you saying Barack Obama brought the cocaine to the White House?
I am not linking them in those stories in that way.
Breaking.
I'm just saying that a lot of things with this Biden White House happens, and there is no account, and nobody knows
Did
how.
you just say, I'm not saying, I'm just saying? Is that what you said?
I did.
At the lunch held in late June at the White House residence, Obama, isn't it that, here's Joe Biden inviting Obama up to the White House residence.
Old boss.
But famously, during the entire 8 years Obama was president, he never once invited Joe Biden up there when he was his vice president. At the lunch held in late June at the White House residence, Obama promised to do all he could to help the president get reelected, according to 2 people familiar with the meeting who spoke on the condition of anonymity. Why do you have to be anonymous about this?
Well, because you're leaking the story. So.
Oh, this is a planned. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it
this is a planted story.
It's a telegraph that the Obamas are supporting.
That's right. It's to get out in front of anything else that Obama might say or do. In fact, I don't even know if Obama did, in fact, say that he'd support Joe Biden.
That's a good point.
But the Team Biden wanted that story out there, and now what's Obama supposed to do? I never told him that.
It says here, Obama promised to do all he could to help the president get reelected. We'll see, because let's jump in the Wayback Machine and go back to 2020. Sorry, the weird sounding behind me. But Obama wasn't out there campaigning for Joe Biden very hard until those latter days, where he kind of really just brought some energy towards the end. So maybe that's what it's going to be like.
Maybe
later in the campaign, if Joe Biden survives, then you will see Obama.
Obama was visiting the White House for what Biden aides described as a regular catch-up between the two men who served in the White House together for 8 years. During their lunch, Obama made it clear his concerns were not about Biden's political abilities, but rather a recognition of Trump's iron grip on the Republican Party. Wait a second. I've just spent the last 3 years of Joe Biden going out there saying that MAGA Republicans who support Trump are fascists. They're a thing of the past. They're xenophobic. They're racist. They're totalitarian. They're a threat to our democracy. So, I mean, if I'm a Democrat, I'm thrilled that the Republican Party has gone so far and so extreme and so ugly and so horrible that it's a death knell. He's ruined. Joe Biden keeps saying this is not your father's Republican Party. So why are they concerned about this? This is fascinating.
Well, here's why they're concerned. You have some pockets in the Democratic voter base that are not energized. Black men in particular. The youth vote is still questionable at this point. And a lot of middle class working middle class mothers, women. We'll see where they go. So I think they're trying to once again cobble together the Obama coalition, which brought together a lot of different interesting pockets of folks, but to especially energize black men who have been defecting at least to independent or to the Republican Party.
I don't think Obama appeals to black men at this point. Well, I really don't.
He used to when he used to say, "I am my brother's keeper."
Yeah, well,
not anymore.
My
brother's my sister now.
He appeals to white Chardonnay drinking suburban moms. That's who Obama appeals to because he makes them feel good about themselves and their latent racism. But here's what's interesting to me. Obama is warning of Trump's political strengths. At a private lunch with Biden earlier this summer, Obama voiced concern about Donald Trump's political strengths, including an intensely loyal following. I'll continue in a minute. But think of you're Joe Biden. You've been in politics since 1971. You are you're 20 years older than Barack Obama. And here's Obama lecturing you about politics, lecturing you about your political opponent, lecturing you about how to beat Donald Trump, and being worried about Donald Trump when you've just, in your mind, Joe Biden's mind, just beat Donald Trump in 2020. Yeah. Imagine, I mean, listen, I have no love lost for Biden, but if he was sitting there and actually aware of what was going on, inside he's got to be like, you smart, I'm the president, I'm here, I already beat you, and here you're lecturing me
the first
about
clean,
Donald Trump? Really?
Articulate black man I've ever met.
Exactly, yeah.
You're coming to me, boy.
The article continues, a Trump-friendly conservative media ecosystem in a polarized country, underlining his worry that Trump could be a more formidable candidate than many Democrats realize. That was in the Washington Post earlier this week.
Wait. A Trump-friendly conservative media ecosystem.
Yeah.
Compared to the entire media landscape.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, kudos to WMAL. And all of the conservative media.
We have a hell of a lot of power.
Apparently, very influential. We hit up, we punch up. Is that what the term is?
I've got to tell you that the idea that it's all about projection. They have no idea, recognize exactly the left wing cabal, the Democrat media complex, as Andrew Breitbart used to call it. And they're looking, they've got this lockstep conservative media ecosystem. Trust me. I mean, I guess I qualify as being inside the conservative media ecosystem.
I think you do.
And we can't agree on anything. Are you kidding me? Quick, who's the candidate of choice in the conservative media ecosystem?
And it's like 10 different answers.
Of course it is. Oh, give me a break. But here's what's really interesting. If I may take a moment just to take this story on face value and connect the dots for a moment. It's late June, and Barack Obama is warning Joe Biden that Donald Trump is way more formidable than you think, and you should be really wary of his political strengths and his base and the conservative media ecosystem that will support him. And here we are 1 month later, and Donald Trump has been indicted 2 more times.
Yeah.
Since that lunch.
That's right.
Jack Smith came out with the indictments on classified documents, and he came out with the indictments on January 6th. If Barack Obama was warning Joe Biden that he better take Donald Trump seriously because he could very well win, and then within 4 weeks you've got all these federal charges against Donald Trump, is it not fair to connect those dots and say, well, I guess Biden's taking care of business per Obama's instructions?
Well, if
I'm filling in some blanks there.
Well, but where is President Biden right now? On the beach, preparing to go bike riding, eating an ice cream cone. He's not taking anyone's advice seriously. And I think that's probably the reason why this article was leaked this week, which is weeks after their lunch occurred, to say, hey, we told you this behind closed doors. Yeah. Now we're going to tell everybody you need to pull up your socks, President Biden, if you want to continue to hold this office.
Meanwhile, while Biden's getting advice from Obama and getting major assists from the Justice Department and the media, Donald Trump took to his social media platform and made a statement about his political strategy moving forward. It reads this way: I need one more indictment to ensure my election. He's not too far off.
I don't think he is.
It's 6:15. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives with Jamie Whitten, who so far has not been indicted. She's just chilling out there, hiding out in the bunker that is the Hadid Carpet Cleaning.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
All seasons, all systems on tech.
You're a fashion icon, Patrice Onwuka.
Well, thank you.
You are.
I don't consider myself that, but
and
I
your
do.
shoes. It varies. Today, I'm not going to lie. Your shoes are functional.
They're cute and functional.
But sometimes your shoes are
on TV. I pull out the nice.
Absolutely,
nice
especially when you're on the side chair there on the Newsmax panel.
You gotta have a certain type of shoe there.
And shoes aren't cheap. I know this for a fact. Not from my shoes, but from my wife's closet.
Yeah.
Meredith has quite a collection of shoes. Some shoes she doesn't wear for a couple years, and then she'll bring them out. I was like, all right, I guess that was worth the investment. Shoes are very expensive.
Yes.
Me, it's an afterthought for me.
Okay.
I get the least expensive, least offensive shoes, right?
The dad shoes.
Yeah, the dad shoes, exactly. So I tend to go to stores that I'll go to like the outlets, right?
Okay,
The Nordstrom Rack kind of places,
that's
the
fine.
various things, or Payless. Now, Payless is more of a West Coast phenomenon, right? I don't see.
No, I thought
is
East
Payless
Coast.
around here too?
We had a lot when
See,
in
I have
New
not
England.
seen Payless around here much in the
There
Washington
used to be one
area.
in D.C. and Northeast.
Okay.
But I don't know if it's still there.
So Payless, of course, they're known for BOGO. There's always a buy one
Yes.
get one something, right?
Uh-huh,
Either buy one get
uh-huh.
one. But trust me, when my kids were getting new shoes every 6 months,
Yeah.
Payless was a big part of my
Exactly.
life,
'Cause
right?
You're going through so many.
But they're seen as kind of, cheap. They're seen as like, oh, I wouldn't get caught dead in Payless
Well,
shoes, right?
some of the shoes are painful, and they do Payless shoes, and they do fall apart quickly.
Well, Payless, in an effort to sort of break through that impression that
Okay.
people have of their product and the
Yeah.
quality of their product, and also, as they put it, to do a social experiment in branding and perceptions, they did something very clever, and I'll let ABC News take it from there.
The experiment making headlines by the chain Payless Shoes. They held a grand opening of a luxury store with a different name but the same shoes and charged hundreds more for those same shoes.
By the way, this is a visual, so but if you look at it, it looks like this beautiful, Beverly Hills outlet boutique, and the name of the store is Payless. Not like some Italian thing, right? It's not Payless, it's Payless.
The customers paid. Here's ABC's Kana Whitworth.
Behold, Payless.
We built a fake luxury store in Los Angeles and filled it with Payless shoes. The guests at our grand opening party had no idea.
Guests invited to check out what looked like a luxury shoe shop.
They're elegant, sophisticated.
I just think it's so classy.
And I could tell it was made with high quality material.
A $35 shoe going for $645, an 1,800% markup. Store owners sat on their heels as fashion influencers emptied their wallets.
I would pay $400, $500. Yeah, people are gonna be like, where'd you get those? Those are amazing.
Then they're let in on the prank.
These are actually from Payless.
You've got to be kidding me.
Shut up. Are you serious?
But those shoppers were refunded their money and they got to keep the
They
shoes.
shouldn't have refunded.
David, Payless calling it a provocative social experiment.
It is. It's a social awareness. It's a great way to raise awareness of your
Yeah.
brand, and I think
Yeah.
it. But and
It's
even
hilarious.
and the best part of all of it is it shows these frauds, these fashion
so-called
influencers.
influencers.
Yes,
Yeah.
it mocks them and shows them to be the frauds that they are.
I love this kind of experiment because it does make us go back to roots and ask ourselves, why do we spend as much money as we do?
Thank you.
Listen, I love Louboutins, okay? And they are not cheap in any way. And I have to pay extra to have them, the bottoms covered to protect the red soles.
Oh yeah.
But watching this, I said to myself, well, wait a minute. Should I really be paying $800
Yeah.
for these?
Maybe you should just pay somebody to paint the bottom of your shoes.
I know.
Your kids will do it for free.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Probably won't be quite as classy.
Well, it's
Well, there you go. Just something to bear in mind when you go shoe shopping. It's
Yeah.
6:22. Interesting analysis here on the Biden administration's foreign policy and national security performance. John Hassan at townhall.com writes something that other reporters and other analysts aren't looking at all, and that is the number of embassies that have been evacuated under Joe Biden. It's an interesting metric. You think about the evacuation of the Afghanistan
yes.
embassy, of course. 3 days after they said, we're not going anywhere, we'll stay here, and everyone who's still here will be able to process your visas and everything. And of course,
Yeah, we saw what happened there.
right, then they're out of town and people are hanging from airplanes. And of course, they evacuated the Ukrainian embassy, famously as well. And again, when you evacuate an embassy, it's surrender. It's basically you're fleeing, right? You're waving the white flag. It's like, we're getting out of Dodge. What isn't widely reported, and I thank John Hassan at Town Hall for writing this, Biden has evacuated 6 embassies in just 3 years. During the entire Obama administration, over 8 years, they either fully or partially evacuated 7 embassies. So he's evacuating embassies at twice the rate of Barack Obama. I don't believe we evacuated any embassies under President Trump. There was no need.
I don't know. I don't know.
Really fascinating, actually, and a good analysis. This latest one, by the way, we just pulled out diplomats from Niger, from the Western African nation of Niger. Thank you. So, I mean, we were told that Joe Biden being president would bring stability to our foreign relations, international security. It would bring respect around the world, and he'd be able to, really, really manage things properly. And quite the opposite, it appears.
Well, it's interesting, especially this most recent pullout out of Niger. They recently transitioned to becoming a democracy. They're a key U.S. partner in the battle against terrorism, and the U.S. military has a presence in the country. So of all the countries now they're undergoing a military coup, unfortunately, but for the U.S. to pull out its presence, which would probably all but mean that the democracy is going to tumble.
Yeah.
And then you're losing a key ally. You're losing a military base in a U.S. foothold. You know who's coming to fill the gaps in a lot of these countries?
And China. And when you evacuate an embassy, you send a message, you guys are on your own.
Exactly.
We're done. And listen, I think there are some cases when you do need to do that because it has become so unsafe and so untenable. But think about it. Even Jimmy Carter didn't evacuate the Iranian embassy when everything, I mean, maybe he should have, clearly. But really fascinating analysis and food for thought. All right, coming up, we'll speak with former federal prosecutor Will Scharf on these charges against Donald Trump.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News. Now.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:36 on this Friday morning in the nation's capital. Thanks for joining us on a very busy day. We're covering yesterday's unprecedented arraignment in the District of Columbia. Former president and current presidential candidate Donald Trump. At 7:35, Andy McCarthy will join us. He's a former U.S. attorney, and he is also a political commentator. 8:05, Representative Ben Cline out of Virginia. And at 8:35, Ian Pryor, coming out of Loudoun County, will give us analysis of what's going on out there. I'm Larry O'Connor, alongside Patrice Onwuka. Patrice, this is the president's attorney Alina Habba yesterday commenting in real time on the arraignment for the press.
A witch hunt is when you relentlessly attack your opponent, when you relentlessly attack the thing that you are most afraid of. People are afraid of somebody that cannot be bought by Washington. People are afraid of somebody who is independently wealthy and who has given up his good life to fight for this country.
Will Scharf is joining us now. He's a former federal prosecutor. He worked on the confirmations of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, and he's currently running as a Republican candidate for the Missouri Attorney General's seat. Thank you, Mr. Scharf, for joining us this morning.
Really great to be with you. However early it is with you, it's an hour earlier here in Heartland.
That's right. We love Central Time. Well, listen, you heard the words of President Trump's attorney there. Does she have a point? Is this a witch hunt because they fear President Trump, so they're throwing all of this at him?
You know, I think when you look at the way that Jack Smith, the special counsel, has handled the investigation into Trump, it certainly appears that they started with an objective, which was indicting President Trump and sending him to prison, and then tried to find legal theories that fit that objective, which is the opposite of how prosecutions are supposed to work in a system governed by the rule of law and a system of fair justice. This latest indictment, I think, is outrageous. I think it relies on just wildly overbroad use and application of the federal statutes they've indicted the president under. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that develops in this D.C. district courtroom. But it's I said the other day, it's a sad day for American democracy, the American republic.
Well, you have a great piece in the Federalist, 6 Ways Jack Smith's latest indictment is legally flawed and politically shady. And to dive in just a little bit on the first one, you talk about Trump's state of mind. Whether or not the president was lying or knew the claims that he were making were false, you're saying that that's not what needs to be proven. It needs to be his intent needs to be proven, and it seems like that's all but impossible for Smith to be able to do. Can you talk about that more?
Sure. So, there's an idea in the law, mens rea, having a culpable state of mind. 3 of the 4 charges here are conspiracy charges. The 4th is what's called a 1512 charge, obstruction of an official proceeding. But with all of these charges, Jack Smith is going to have to prove essentially that President Trump knew that what he was doing was wrong, knew that the result he was seeking was illegal, knew that the means they were using was whatever the means was illegal, that he had conspired with other people who also knew all of that. And that's the only way to obtain a conviction here, is proving things about President Trump's state of mind, the way that President Trump was perceiving these election challenges that I don't think are matched by the record. I mean, even on the face of the indictment, Jack Smith points to the numerous public statements Trump was making about the nature of his election challenges. If Donald Trump believed the things that he was saying publicly about these election challenges, believed that there was a way for Pence to send this back to the states and get new electors, if Trump believed that, it's an absolute defense against all of these charges.
It's funny because I've seen a lot of smart legal minds, or I use the term smart advisedly, telling me that, that's the George Costanza defense. It's a meme out there. George Costanza famously on Seinfeld said, listen, if you believe it, it's not a lie. But the fact of the matter is, based on what he's being charged with, if Donald Trump truly believed he won the election, then he isn't guilty of what they're charging him of.
And not just that, it's Trump, and certainly in the case of these conspiracy charges, all the people around him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, to have a conspiracy, you need 2 or more people who jointly enter into a course of criminal conduct or plan to enter into a course of criminal conduct. So it's not enough even that, Trump may have known this was wrong. If John Eastman and Sidney Powell and the unindicted co-conspirators here, if they didn't know that they were wrong, it's tough to see how a conspiracy charge survives. When I say that Jack Smith is using this overbroad interpretation of these statutes to charge, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It's tough to see how to fairly make a case based on theories that he and his team have propounded.
Well, and that brings us to the big question here. We're speaking with Will Scharf. He's a former federal prosecutor, and he's currently running for Attorney General in Missouri. If you're going to go to the unprecedented action here of indicting a former president and the current leading candidate for president in the middle of the election. And by the way, we were told this was going to be insurrection. It was going to be incitement, all of those things coming out of the January 6th hearings.
Yeah.
None of that is there.
Exactly.
What he is being charged with, I would think if you're a special counsel and you know the political charged environment and the fact that this man is currently running for office, if you're going to charge him, it should be a slam dunk. It shouldn't be a contorted use of statutes that weren't necessarily designed for what they're being applied for now. There shouldn't be any question. I'm seeing people like you and people who are pretty fair-minded calling into question what he's done here. And if you're going to indict a candidate for president, wouldn't you make sure that there is no gray area, that there is no second guessing, that it's 100%? Yeah, it's obvious he should be indicted.
Yeah, and we saw the same thing in the documents case down in Florida, where in any other case involving classified information, there's a statute that you would typically charge a defendant under, unlawful retention of classified information. Because of the president's declassification authority, they were worried about bringing what would be a normal case. So instead, they used the 100-year-old Espionage Act, which is a highly controversial statute to begin with, and tried to shoehorn Trump's conduct into that. At every step of the way, Jack Smith's team has been willing to bend and twist the law to fit their desired objective, which is indicting Trump over and over again and sending him to prison. That's just not the way law and order is supposed to work.
Yeah, thank you. And that sort of adds to what we're seeing on a daily basis, sadly, out of Washington, whether it pertains to Trump or whether it pertains to Biden or whether it pertains to, well, frankly, at this point, I got to believe you and me. Will Scharf, running for Attorney General in Missouri, a former federal prosecutor. Thanks for giving us your insight and great article at the Federalist on this.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
Great being with you guys. Really appreciate you having me on.
Go back to bed. Children, although like most institutions, sadly, it has been politicized. What happens is with these organizations, activists run for office to be on the board or in the advisory panel, all that stuff. Most people who are practicing pediatricians and just, we are affiliated and we use these guys just to, go on the annual trip, maybe the conference, and just as a credential, they don't want to get involved in the politics of the organization. They don't want to they don't want to do the board meetings. They don't want to do all that stuff. They just want to be pediatricians. So these activists with radical agendas end up getting on the board, and then the next thing you know, the American Academy of Pediatricians is calling for, genital mutilation surgery on young children. Right. So the headline from the New York Times doesn't tell the entire story, but it is fascinating. Medical group backs youth gender treatments, but calls for research review. Now think about that for a minute.
They have it backwards, but okay, yes.
Yeah. So it's like, we absolutely want to go forward with all of this, experimentation of hormone treatments and puberty blockers on young people. But let's also have a review and test these things to see if they actually work. What?
Well, that's putting the cart before the horse, both in the article headline, but also what the American
in reality,
the AAP is actually doing here. And this is not happening in a vacuum. I would like to believe it's because of the lawsuits that folks like Chloe Cole, detransitioner, are suing these medical institutions. I would like to believe that it's the legislation being passed by brave conservatives, but it's really, I think, frankly, the international pediatric community that is pushed back. So you have England and Sweden. They have both limited access to treatments on kids because they're finding that there's evidence of ineffectiveness of these, or we don't know what the long-term effects of these treatments are on children.
That's right. These drugs have never been tested for this purpose on these individuals.
Bingo. And so other countries are not doing this. They're literally stopping these treatments, and the United States is now looking like the oddball out and continuing to do this to our kids. And so that's what the American Pediatrics Academy is responding to. So,
but it's outrageous. They've renewed their support for gender care for minors, yet at the same time commissioned a systemic review of medical research on the treatments when there hasn't been any medical review, the medical tests at all. So, we affirm so the political move is we're going to keep doing this. And then the actual scientific and medical move is we should probably test them. Maybe you should do that in reverse. Maybe you should.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if
it almost sounds like the vaccine.
I know, right? Well, and after your assessments are done, if you find that there is something scary there, are you going to then backtrack on what you said and stop and pull your support from these medical treatments? That's another question.
This is why, for as much as we respect and have faith in the scientific process, we increasingly have lost our faith in the scientific community. Very different things. 6:52.